Hello and welcome. My name is Mimi Boblick. I am Director of Education at Parents Against Vaping E-Cigarettes, or PAVE, and I'm going to talk about the youth vaping epidemic that's taken our country by storm. And I'm going to go pretty quickly through the material, but just because I have to get through in 30 minutes. But if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at education@parentsagainstavaping.org, and happy to answer any questions you have or follow up, or if you want to get involved, we'd love to talk to you as well. So I'm just going to begin by talking a little bit about PAVE and then about the youth vaping epidemic itself, the numbers, and some of the health effects and what to look out for, and then finally what we can do about it. So PAVE is committed to providing education around the youth vaping epidemic, as well as advocacy. We are advocating for primarily a ban on flavored e-cigarettes. That is what's taken most of our time on the legislative and advocacy front. And so we are working hard throughout the country to try to get laws passed, including in New York State, where we were instrumental with the coalition to get a law on flavored e-cigarettes passed through Governor Cuomo's office. So that was very exciting, and we're really proud of that work. So I want to first start by talking about, very briefly, about how this youth epidemic got started. Really, Juul, and I'm sure you've all heard of Juul, Juul really led the way through heavy social media push a few years ago that really set off the youth vaping epidemic. And they said they were trying to appeal to adults who were trying to quit smoking, but as you can see by these pictures, these ads tell a very different story. They were sponsoring events and advertising on social media, and other companies came in and did the same with big influencers. And you see here, this girl, she could be my own daughter. She's obviously very young looking, talking about in their ads about parental texts and, escaping from it all. These ads really do talk about, speak volumes without saying anything. And I think what these companies know, they definitely know, is that 90% of addiction occurs before the age of 21. So I think these companies really understand that if they get our kids hooked early, they're going to maybe have them for life, the way that they did to our own parents and grandparents with cigarettes. So this is why they're targeting kids so young. And it's the same playbook that the tobacco companies used years ago to target people with cigarettes. They're just using to target people now with e-cigarettes. So again, same playbook, just slightly different product. And you see it's working. So these numbers have actually come down since last year. These are the most current numbers we have about the national youth usage. And last year, the numbers were over 5 million, 5.3 million users. And so these numbers have come down, but they're still well over epidemic levels. We want to bring these numbers down both nationally and, of course, locally. And we know that these aren't necessarily kids who are risk takers the way you might think of smokers. These are mainstream kids who are using cigarettes. And the most alarming new statistic for us, two alarming statistics. One is that there was 1,000% increase in the use of disposables in just 1 year alone, these disposable vape products, which I'll show you in a bit, among kids who are vaping. So they are really gravitating to the disposable products. The other alarming issue is that one finding tells us that kids who are vaping more frequently, which indicates for us a higher level of addiction, which is really sad and alarming. And we want to try to stop that. And unfortunately, New York is no exception. We see that while cigarette smoking in the yellow has come down, the red, which is e-cigarette, is just coming up, just along with the national numbers. So unfortunately, we are not immune to it here in New York, and our numbers were quite alarming last year. And what this really indicates, this graph, is it says that on the right-hand side, you see we got cigarette smoking rates down to the single digits over the last number of years. And I think that parents and society as a whole have done an amazing job bringing down these rates, right? I think through negative advertising and education about the dangers of smoking, youth have really responded and it's reflected. But then you look at the right-hand side and we have over 135% increase in e-cigarette use in just 2 years among high schoolers, and over 200% for middle schoolers in just the last 2 years. So really a big problem in our country. Some of the reasons that teens vape, as I mentioned, uh, flavors are really hooking our kids. 80% of kids who start vaping start with a flavored product, and most kids use flavors. So this is one of the reasons we're really trying to get flavors off the market. This is why we are pushing so hard across the country to get these flavors off the market. In addition, as I mentioned, the big heavy social media push and targeted marketing to kids, it made these products look really cool, just like they did with cigarettes. Also, these products are extremely addictive. It is even worse than cigarettes in terms of addiction, ease of addiction, because the nicotine in these products is something that Juul created and patented. It's nicotine salts, which is a highly addictive form of nicotine, and there are high levels of this nicotine in vapes. So one vape could have as much as 1 to 2 packs of cigarettes worth of nicotine. So they pack a powerful punch, and they're very, very addictive. In addition, social pressures are always there, heightened stress at school, always there. I think the changing social norm is something that is a problem now, because whereas it might not have been so cool to smoke, now kids think it's maybe really cool to vape. Perceived lower risk. These companies are targeting or marketing these products as safer than cigarettes, which has not been proven. They really shouldn't be making that claim. But kids when they hear safer, they hear safe, right? So I think that again, we're not really concerned with what adults do. This is really about protecting kids in this fight. And so we know these products aren't safe for kids. We don't know yet. I think it's going to be a long time till we really know if e-cigarettes are actually safer than cigarettes, but for children, for kids and teens developing brains, they are definitely not. Also, these products are more affordable. They are certainly more affordable than cigarettes, and some of the disposables are quite cheap. And even the Juul, once you invest in it, in the initial technology, it is still cheaper than cigarettes. And finally, we hear that from our health experts that there's always a connection between substance use and mental health, and that some kids will use drugs like nicotine to self-medicate if they have an underlying mental health issue like anxiety or depression. We hear from kids that it might help them concentrate more or calm them down. These are real feelings that they're reporting. So in addition, they get this big head buzz within just a few seconds. This special nicotine salt does hit the brain and body very quickly and gives kids a really big kick. And then finally, one point to make is that these products are really accessible to our kids. We know from parents across the country, they tell us that their kids can go into vape shops and convenience stores and gas stations and buy these products at many stores. And while I'm sure there are companies trying to do the right thing and stores, there are many out there who are willing to sell to our kids. I've actually thrown my son in to test it out in a number of stores, and he's always successful. He hasn't been turned down yet. So we really have to work on accessibility as well, and limiting that, and finding ways to perhaps have greater punitive measures for entities that are selling to our kids. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the popular products so that you're aware of them and on the lookout. Teen favorites now are really disposables, again, because they're super cheap, and also because they're easy to hide. They don't have to keep them in their backpack for their parents to see. They use them and they throw them away. Unfortunately, they contain a lot of nicotine. Again, these products contain about 5 to 6% nicotine, which can be 1 to 2 packs of cigarettes worth of nicotine in these products. So these are some popular ones: Stig, Puff Bar, Miley. You may have heard of these, but if not, you should be on the lookout. The problem is that there's, with vapes in general, there's no beginning or end, right? With cigarettes, you can look at a pack of cigarettes, You know you've had a cigarette, it's done, you throw it away. You can look at a pack and see that you've smoked X amount of cigarettes in a day, and you can kind of calibrate. But unfortunately, with e-cigarettes, it's over when it's done. You don't know. There's no way to look. There's no indication how much you've had, and so it's not hard to go through a pod or even 2 pods a day, is what we've heard from kids. So unfortunately, it's very easy to keep day and night in their pockets, under the pillow. We've heard kids even use them day and night, and they're really easy to use. Also, refillables are quite popular, probably because there's over 15,000 flavors and kid-friendly flavors. So if they're telling us they're targeting adults, there's flavors like gummy bear and cotton candy, banana split, Kool-Aid, Hawaiian punch. So these are kid-friendly flavors. You just take e-liquid, you have to buy the e-juice separately, and you pour it into the device. And so these refillables are also popular. And then Juul has lost a bit of favor, but it had over 70% market share for a number of years since it came on the market in 2017. But because of some new regulations in terms of limiting, taking some of the flavored pods off the market, Juul is not as popular, but still you should be on the lookout because it's very sleek. Many teachers tell us they thought that kids had flash drives, that they were charging, flash drives in their computers, USB chargers, these things, they look like USB chargers, but they're really Juul chargers. So just to be on the lookout for that. And again, we had a federal ban last year of some of the devices, but it left thousands of products on the market, including refillables, including disposables, and very importantly, including menthol. And what you can see here is, if you don't take all the products off the market, all the flavored products, kids are going to gravitate to what they can get their hands on. So the orange line represents flavored, fruit-flavored devices and pods, vapes. So, we saw a decline when we were able to get those products off the market, even though there's still some that are accessible. But in the blink of an eye, again, the blue line represents mint and menthol. So if you leave mint or menthol on the market, which they have, you see that kids are just going to gravitate to these products. So that's why we advocate to get all of them off the market. In addition, unfortunately, the tobacco industry has a decades-long, well-documented history of targeting vulnerable populations, including African Americans, with aggressive marketing. And it worked. Unfortunately, 85% of African Americans who smoke menthol. And another reason why we really want to get menthol off the market. It's been well documented. It also numbs the throat and the lungs. It allows for a deeper inhale. So again, these products are not safe, and they're certainly not safe for our kids. Another product to be on the lookout are these sort of non-vape devices, non-vape products that contain also lots of nicotine. The Zyn is very popular. I think it's possible because there are kids who can't get through a day, honestly, without vaping, without their nicotine hit. And so they might be more inclined to take Zyn. Zyn is a little pouch with flavored nicotine in it, and they can put it in their mouth, and the nicotine sort of dissolves and they get their fix that way. So just to be aware of what that product looks like. And, if you see it, you can have a conversation with your kids. Also, Pixetine is a toothpick which contains nicotine. So just to be on the lookout for that. And I'm sure, I don't know if you've heard of these YouTube videos. Sometimes they're set up in classrooms at schools, through the police departments, set up mock bedrooms and things. But just to be on the lookout, there are devices that look like other things that, again, that are vapes. So if you look here, some of these are weed pens and e-cigarettes. So we just want to make sure that we know what they look like so we can be on the lookout in our kids' bedrooms, in our kids' backpacks, and then we can have a conversation. And again, just that these contain high levels of nicotine, and also the product labeling is very misleading. It says 5% of something. Well, 5% nicotine, that doesn't sound like a lot, but 5% again is 1 to 2 packs of cigarettes. And the other thing about these, what part of what makes them so addictive is that they're so easy to conceal and hide. They don't have a smell the way cigarettes do. So kids can, keep them anywhere at any time. I've heard of kids vaping in classrooms, as I'm sure some frustrated teachers have heard. So we just have to, try and be vigilant. Um, and so, kids will tell us, oh, don't worry, this is just flavored water, not to worry. Well, we can tell you, and you can tell your kids, these products have 0% water. And in fact, all the chemicals that are listed here are in e-cigarettes. They've been found in e-cigarettes. Not every chemical is found in all vapes, but all of these chemicals have been found in e-cigarettes. And in fact, some of these chemicals are actually found in traditional cigarettes, which I, as a parent, learned doing this kind of research. And so, it's really important. The labels aren't going to necessarily have most of these ingredients. They have very few, but simply put, these products are not vapor. They're aerosolized products. And, I think if the vaping industry called it aerosoling or, something else, maybe kids would be less likely to use them. I don't know. But these chemicals here, some of them are known toxins and some are known carcinogens. And so we just, have to be aware. What has not been tested yet is taking these products, these chemicals, combining them, heating them at high levels, and inhaling them into the lungs. And so only time will tell what the response in our bodies will be. But from what we understand from the research so far, it is not good. And in fact, even inhaling just the nicotine alone, studies have been done with just nicotine, and once metabolized, nicotine has been found to cause cancer in the lungs and livers of mice. So, even just that is not safe. And even if you took all these chemicals away and we're just left with the vape device itself with nothing in it, there are little metal coils in these devices. Now, when you heat these metal coils over and over, they start to disintegrate, and those little metal particles will be inhaled into the lungs. So there's just nothing really good about this. And, only time will tell how bad it is. So we just would like to keep our kids off of these products. As a concerned parent, this is probably the most important and compelling information for me in terms of why we want our kids to stay off these products. So as many of you probably know, I learned this through all of this again, our brain development continues till 25. And this is again why these companies want to get our kids hooked early, because kids' brains are wired for addiction, and developing brains are more sensitive to any addictive substance like nicotine. And so we have been told that nicotine is even as addictive as cocaine and heroin. So it's really hard to quit once a kid becomes addicted. And I've seen it time and again. Parents have reached out to us across the country, just frustrated because their kids are having such a hard time trying to get off these products. So the nicotine is releasing dopamine in the brain, which is a pleasure transmitter that our body already produces. So once they start vaping more and more, they get used to the drug releasing the dopamine and they get dependent on it. And then they don't want the feeling of withdrawal, which is a really harsh feeling for kids. So this is why they continue to use it. And we've also heard of some kids using these products during the day, and then they get so wired that they then use THC to come down at night, and so they can sleep. But so just to be aware that sometimes there's a dual use that happens with these products. So importantly, in terms of the effect on the brain, nicotine causes damage to the adolescent brain in the form of diminished cognitive functioning, worsening memory and processing speed. And I'm sorry to say that our experts tell us that these are irreversible changes to the brain. So again, we just want to keep our kids off them. And in addition, while I mentioned earlier that these products can, some kids use them perhaps to self-medicate for underlying mental health issues, these products can also cause mood disorders like anxiety and depression. So it goes both ways. And in terms of the lungs, inhaling any products like this into the lungs, you have a risk Again, there's heavy metals, ultrafine particulates that are getting inhaled, and the chemicals as well. It can cause inflammation and irritation. People with asthma, it can exacerbate their asthma, and we've heard some sad stories about kids with underlying health issues for whom these products have been really devastating. In addition, they also they affect the heart in a negative way. So nicotine is a stimulant. It creates a fight or flight response that you don't want a kid to have unless they're in a dangerous or exciting situation. But it elevates the heart rate and it increases the blood pressure, increases the adrenaline in the heart. And none of these things you want if you're simply by vaping. These are things that might happen in a running race or an exciting situation. But I've also heard of kids having heart palpitations with these products because, again, if you vape enough nicotine, it's very stimulating and it sets off this fight or flight response and sets off this adrenaline response. Also, there are other effects in addition to the heart and lungs that vapes affect the immune system. They weaken the immune system. And you may have heard about the seizures that were in the press a lot, vaping related seizures that were caused by nicotine vaping. Also, there's something we call nixic. It's like when kids lose their appetite and they lose weight and they have an upset stomach from all the nicotine and possibly the chemicals. And I'm sure you guys have all heard about EVALI. These are the vaping related lung illnesses. They were in the press before COVID. Since COVID, we haven't heard about them much, but they are still around. And I think what's important here to take away is that kids will tell us, oh, don't worry, I'm not vaping THC, and that's where all the really bad lung illnesses were caused. But in fact, while many of these illnesses, the EVALI, were caused by vaping THC, we do know for a fact that some of them were also caused by simply vaping nicotine. So it's really important to tell your kids that it can happen with just vaping nicotine as well. And unfortunately, we have some bad news on the COVID front because the research is showing that kids who vape are 5 times more likely to be diagnosed with COVID. And this partly has to do with again, weakening the immune system. You're suppressing the immune response, but also because kids are sharing devices. We see that in high school and in college, so you're more likely to be exposed that way. And unfortunately, we are also told by our experts at Mass General Hospital who have done some work on this that kids who vape or smoke and catch COVID are twice as likely to develop a severe case. So again, another reason to maybe talk to your kids about quitting now because it's never been more dangerous to vape. Some of the signs of vaping, some of the most common signs are a little bit tricky because our kids are already have some of these just being teenagers. So, but certainly if you notice changes in your child's behavior, that can be a sign of vaping or vaping addiction. And now that we're at home more with our kids because of COVID, it may be easier to see, although they may be keeping their door closed more because you're home more. I don't know. But frequent excuses to basically leave where you are, either to go to the bathroom or go outside. Also a sweet smell in their room or a smell that you don't recognize. If you remember, I mentioned that these products are aerosols. So imagine like hairspray. It sort of sticks to things. It sticks to your hair and your clothes. So it does linger in the room. It doesn't smell like cigarettes, but it has a unique smell. And so you might notice kids are using candles or room fresheners in a way that they hadn't used before. Also, there might be a dry cough, like a raspy cough that, again, hasn't been there. You haven't noticed it. Or if your kids are perhaps athletes and they're reporting that they're not able to breathe as well, because many kids are reporting to us and health experts that when they vape, they're not able to get the same performance athletically as they were able to before they started vaping. More secretive attitude, again, hard to know with kids, but a secretive attitude, irritability and mood swings and anger, hard to know sometimes with our kids. But if you notice changes, and also changes in sleeping patterns, as I mentioned, nicotine's a stimulant, so they may have a problem sleeping at night where they didn't before, especially if they're vaping late at night. So this is the trickiest part in terms of, it's probably the most important part of the conversation, but what parents can do and how we talk to our kids about it. Because we're all so different and we parent so differently, but we can just share with you what our experts are telling us, and we can all make our own judgments as to how we deal with our kids who are vaping or not vaping yet, and we're trying to educate them. One is just to be a good example and not smoke or vape in front of your kids, or our kids. Talking to their child, be an advocate for your kid if they're in trouble at school. It may be a great time to have a conversation with the school, because punitive measures don't really work with a kid who's addicted, unfortunately. That if they have a nicotine addiction, punishment really may not be the most effective way to go. We take a no shame, no blame attitude, and we talk to our kids about that. They have been targeted by big tobacco companies. They were fooled into thinking that these products were safe for them, and really they were in an unfair situation. And so we need to help them understand the facts so they can make informed decisions. And some kids, actually, when we talk about how they were really taken advantage of and they're being used by the big tobacco industries as lab rats, first of all, but also to make billions of dollars off of them and at the risk of their health. Sometimes kids really respond to that and they get angry and they might be more inclined to turn away. But unfortunately, scare tactics don't tend to work, which I do try with my kids. It tends not to work. So in terms of how we talk to our kids, we're being told to start as early as 9. Kids are seeing this in middle schools across the country. They see it in the bathroom, they see it in lockers. Kids see it around them. And so the earlier we start, the better. No judgment, there's no single approach that works, but just trying to be patient and listen, avoiding direct questions like, you're not vaping, are you? Which I've also tried, does not work. But they're more likely to deny, right? But maybe have a more broad conversation about what they're seeing in their classroom or what they're seeing in the bathrooms, or, are any of their friends smoking or vaping, and how does that make them feel? Have just sort of having a conversation about what they're seeing around them. Also using the right words like vaping and juuling, because it just helps to sort of know what they're talking about and have the same lingo. Also being persistent. It's not a one-time conversation. We have to really understand the facts and talk to them in a very matter-of-fact way. Try not to use scare tactics. I think the facts are scary enough. And we've heard from parents across the country, again, whose kids are just struggling with both nicotine addiction and also the effects of nicotine, whether it was through seizures or a lung illness. We've heard enough to know that we don't need more scare tactics, that the facts are scary enough for us. And know when to get help. I think that's one of the most important. If you suspect your child has an issue with an addiction, or even just a pre-addiction, if you suspect that they're vaping, it's really important to seek out medical professional help. We even hear from some pediatricians, unfortunately, that, oh, don't worry, as long as you're not smoking, it's fine. But now pediatricians are starting to understand the real health harms of vaping. And so we're actually educating them along the way. And unfortunately, there are no approved smoking medications or patches for kids yet. But our incredible advisors, like our Dr. Winikoff out of Mass General, has some great tips for adults to quit. And sometimes doctors will use patches and gums and other products on kids, but you definitely should talk to a healthcare provider before you do any of that. So depending on the situation, some doctors prescribe a combination of both these kind of therapies, nicotine replacement therapies, and also behavioral therapies. And then there are resources that kids and adults can use. So one of them is one that we recommend through the Truth Initiative, which is called This Is Quitting. And it's a texting app that you can go online and you get these reminders and support every day. And it's sort of an AI-driven app. And I've tried it as a parent. I think it's pretty helpful, and I think the kids find it helpful too. There's many thousands of people using it across the country. In addition, for the teachers out there and parents as well, We have two school-based programs that we are really keen on. One is through Stanford, it's the Tobacco Prevention Toolkit, and one is through an organization called catch.org, and it's called Catch My Breath program. They're both free. They're both really easy to use. Anyone can use it in the classroom. You don't have to be a health expert to use them. They're very user-friendly. They have talking points and slides and handouts and things that you can do with your kids. Anyone can do it. A lot of times I know PE teachers are, acting as health ed teachers. Anyone can do it. So I highly recommend those. And that's really the end of our main program. I would ask you if you could kindly just take a quick survey by going on your phone and opening up your camera, and it will prompt you, if you hover over the QR code here, it will prompt you to open up a survey. And if I could kindly ask you to do that, we would love to hear your feedback. It's a one-question survey, whether you find it useful, but also if you want to learn more information or get more involved, either as an educator, which is what I'm doing. We're all unpaid volunteers. We have only a few paid people on staff, but we're all volunteers and going out and doing this work. So we would love to get more of you to do this across the country, and as well as advocating in your communities. So I thank you very much. And if you want to get a hold of us again, you can get me at info@parentsagainst.vaping.org, education@parentsagainst.vaping.org, or info@parentsagainst.vaping.org. Thank you so much.